Welcome to another episode of Million Dollar Stories, where we get to interview authors from all over the world. I love talking to authors because they have the courage to take their thoughts and their stories and put it down in a book and share it with the many, ultimately leading to a potential new life, right? Changing their legacy and destiny in the process. And if you want to write a book out there, I highly recommend you check out Dream Starters Publishing. We can help you out with wherever you're at in the process. And if you have a book that's done, you want to generate leads with it for your business, check out bookmarketingcrm.com. As you know, this podcast is really for the entrepreneur looking to start or grow a business, but it's really about taking control of your life. And that does require financial IQ and financial literacy. And that's why this episode is going to be great for you, because we are discussing a book called Investing 101, which came out, and this is 2008, I think is when it came out. But the lessons and principles are evergreen. These are principles that will never die. So we have the author with us today, Kathy Christoff. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, let's start off with the genesis of this book. I think you gave me a quick little rundown before we hit the record button. But what made you want to write this book in the first place? And if you can give us a quick little background on where you come from and what got you here, that would be amazing.
I've been reporting on finance really all of my adult life. And I was working at the LA Times, and we decided to do a series of stories on investing because originally, before the book was actually written, I it was 1999. The market had been crazy for years and years. Everybody wanted to invest. And a lot of people were doing really incredibly stupid things, day trading, speculating, buying stocks that were, worth so much money, or that were selling for so much money, and they were worth so much less. And so it was kind of the run up to the giant crash that happened at the end of that year, and then again in 2002. Um, and so what I was doing is kind of fundamental lessons on how to invest and how to invest wisely, how to invest in a market that was overheated, um, why you should have international stocks in your portfolio, all the stuff that is really basic to anybody who is a true investor and is going to make money at it in the long run. And, the thing is almost anybody can make money in the short run in a bull market because a
Hmm.
rising tide lifts all boats. But if you want to make money like Warren Buffett makes money, you actually need to invest based on fundamentals. And that's what Investing 101 was all about.
Nice. Yeah. And we were talking a little bit about how if it's new and it feels like it's very time sensitive, it might be somewhat of a scam or some type of, very temporary way of making money. But the basics of investing, when it comes to whether it's real estate or stocks or bonds or however mutual funds, if you apply these lessons, like you said it before, these should never go away.
Yeah.
And I interviewed somebody who invests for the top 1% richest families, top 250 richest families in the world. And he said something to me. He said that stuck with me. The richest people invest like dead men. And I was like, what does that even mean? What it means is what he found out was he would invest for people, they would pass away. And then there were the other people who were trying to play the game and change from one investment vehicle to the next. And they thought they were smarter than the market and they were constantly moving. What they found out was always, almost, it was totally true in every situation. The people who died always had more money in their bank account than the people who were playing the game. Because if you jumped around, you're trying to time things. But if you invest like a dead man, you're just going to reap the rewards and put your money in the S&P 500 and forget about it, right? So let's start with the basics here, starting small and picking the right investments. Can you give us a little insight into what that means and how you do things?
Well, you can do it in a whole bunch of different ways, but for the average investor, there really isn't a better way than buying into Vanguard's Total Market Index ETF. And why the ETF? Because you can buy um, a, however much money you have, you can dollar cost average in, which essentially invests the same amount every month. Um, and you can buy and sell during the day. And mutual funds have more restrictions on how you trade, but it's exactly the same portfolio as the Vanguard Total Market Index mutual fund. Um, and what this does is it gives you a piece in 6,000 stocks. And so you perform, or your portfolio performs exactly the way the market performs. And the market performs really well over time, over long stretches of time. And they've got data going back to the 1920s. Um, Stocks on average earn more than 10% per year, just on average over that long 80, 90, 100-year period, right? Um, and so if you can do 10% per year, that's extraordinary, right? Over short periods of time, you have no idea. They go up, they go down. You know, it it's out of your control. But if you're really an investor, to your point about the dead man doing better than the person who's trading around, um, if you're really an investor, you're in it for the long haul.
Hmm.
And in fact, you were mentioning this guy talking about how people who didn't trade at all did much better. There's actually a study on this. A guy named Terry O'Dean got trading data from Schwab, and he's updated it a few times. And essentially, it's anonymized, but it's like it gives you exactly what people did. And the more you trade, the less money you make. It's
So
that simple.
crazy. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's logical, really, because we're not psychic. If we were, we wouldn't be talking about investing and we'd be just sitting on our millions on a beach. But the other thing is there cost to trading, and less now than there used to be, but there's a tax cost. So if you sell something at a profit, you've got to pay 20% of that profit to the government. So that's 20% less than you have, or that you have to reinvest. And so, yeah, it's just a bad idea all around.
Yeah, I think that the way I look at it now, especially since I've been an entrepreneur since 2009, I realize that money is always going to be attracted to those who are committed to the journey, right? And so, what's easier, in my opinion? Whatever's easiest is always going to be the wrong choice. So, whatever's easiest is most likely, oh, the first sign of, failure, I'm going to pull my money out, right? Always. And so, it's hard though to have faith in the invisible, or it's hard to stay the course no matter what the people around you are saying or what the TV's telling you to do. And when it comes to a business, it's hard to stay the course for 5, 7, 10 years. It's easy to go from side hustle to side hustle, starting a business to starting a different business. It's
Right.
easy to stay at the job. So whatever's easiest is wrong. Whatever's hard is usually the right path. And it seems like what's hard is having a system in place that you just keep stacking money away. And there is a study that you bring up early on in your book that talks about how when people make more money, studies show that they always spend more money, but they don't invest or save a percentage that's equal to the amount they're spending, right? So something stays constant while other parts of their spending habits increase. And maybe that's just natural. Once again, it's what's easiest is usually to, oh, I'm making more money, therefore I can spend more and I don't need to worry about investing because that will take care of itself since I'm seeing the automatic dopamine hits of making more money. Any interesting things that you can relay about that?
Yeah. Well, I think that for me, I'm kind of a math girl. And so whenever I feel uncomfortable about staying the course, I do the math. And it's even though I recommend to people that they just buy the market, I also recommend that you take a little bit of money and invest in individual stocks. And the reason why is when you do that, you start looking at the fundamentals of not only your stock, but of the market. And there's just a fundamental ratio that you want to look at, and that's the price earnings ratio. So that's the price of the stock versus how much it earns in annually and per share. And you want to keep that ratio somewhere in um, at the company's growth rate. So essentially, if a company is growing at 10% a year, their earnings are growing 10% a year, a 10 times earnings. So if the company makes $1 a year in per share earnings, spending $10 when it's growing at 10%, that's a good deal. That's great. If you're spending $20 for that $1 of earnings, now all of a sudden you're kind of getting in overvalued territory. And so what you need to do is occasionally check and see what's the earnings of the S&P or the total market index, and how much is it selling, what multiple of earnings is it selling at. And if it's a reasonable multiple, then you just kind of go, you know, I have nothing to worry about here. If it's getting to be an unreasonable multiple, you do not sell. But what you do is make sure that any near-term need for cash that you have covered. So
Mhm.
I always tell people you should have kind of 2 years of your gap. That's, your living expenses minus whatever you're bringing in every month. Um, you should have that set aside in cash. And the reason why is because the typical bull market lasts less than, or excuse me, the typical bear market, the bad period where the market crashes before it recovers, that usually lasts about 2 years. So don't force yourself to sell in a bad market. Just have the cash ready so that you're able to go, you know what? I know the market is crazy. People are scared. That's the wrong time to get out. The time is just for me to sit back and go, look, I've got the cash I need. Everything's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that
It,
shutting off that emotional trigger, man. That is hard for a lot of people. I mean, it's hard for anybody.
yeah, but I think if you logic it out, you can make yourself be calmer. I know again in the 2008 crash, I had to talk my parents out of selling all their stocks. And it was like, and I'm doing the price earnings ratios, and I'm like, everything I know about investing tells me that this is the absolute worst time to sell.
Yes.
Just, and I literally say to my mom, look, if you lose all your money because of this, I will make it up for you to you
You
because
had that conversation with them. That's amazing.
yeah, I'm absolutely certain that this is the wrong time to sell. Well, a bunch of their friends sold, and you can't ever recover at that point because just at the nadir of the market is when everybody sells out. They've given up. Like they've been demoralized by the market. And that's exactly when it turns. And now it starts going up, and you think, oh, I'm not going to buy in now because, I've already been through this trauma. I'm not going to do that to myself again. And you wait and you wait and you wait. And pretty soon the market, I mean, from that point, I can't even give you the multiple, but it's probably 1,000 times higher, right? And so you're just like, what do you do now? Now do you buy in? And now you're buying in much, much higher. And that's why the good advice is to invest like a dead man. Don't do anything. Act like everything's fine. But I mean, do you make it fine? Because the thing that always I try to remind people is that this isn't play money. This is actually the reason you save and invest is because you have something that you want either now or later. And so you do your investing in a holistic way where you take a look at what do I need to live on? What do I aspire to? And how am I going to get there? And that plan, I mean, that plan will alter here and there, but if you've really thought about it, it's not going to alter a lot. And so you stay the course, right? You say, okay, this is how much money I need in cash. This is how much money I need in kind of medium term investments, which now might be bonds. I it, a few months ago, bonds were not paying enough to even bother with, and so you just like kind of ignore them. But it might be dividend stocks in those instances. But yeah, but the rest goes in stocks because it's long term, and you just leave it alone. Because that will go up and down. It'll be um, a roller coaster ride, but don't look. You don't need to because your long-term plan is on track. And your long-term plan is what this is all about. This is about having the money you need when you need it. It's that simple.
So I think, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think that if you're an entrepreneur and have your own business, your investing strategy is a little different than somebody who's maybe a 9 to 5 corporate worker. All right. And the way I
Absolutely.
look at it now is every time I invest in my company, I'm investing in an asset, right? It's producing money. Anything that produces money consistently to me is an asset. So I will take, and so I applied the profit first technique. Are you familiar with Mike McAllowitt's profit first at all?
No, tell me about it.
Right. So it's all about paying yourself first, but having buckets set up that when money enters your world, your sphere, it automatically goes into a tax account, it goes into a charity account, it goes into your personal account, all before the bills are paid. So you're actually paying yourself first, and then you worry about what's left over, rather than pay what, it's very much like how I've heard this great quote. I think it was a Robert Kiyosaki quote, but it's all poor people. They spend money and then they invest with whatever's left over. Rich people invest and then they spend whatever's left over. So it's sort
Right.
of that philosophy, but it's all about setting up the buckets with multiple accounts, and it's just automated every week or every month, and therefore you don't have to think about it. And so you don't use the brain power on like what goes here or where do I spend my money. It's almost like on autopilot. So I love that. And now I look at it as whatever's left over, in my opinion, 90% goes into my business. That's how I look at it. I see a great return on investment. It becomes a sellable asset. It keeps growing. If I invest in people, software, all that. And then there's 10% that goes into alternative investments, whether that is the stock market, which is very little for me, or real estate, which is what I'm focusing on with like self-storage, or maybe a dabble here and there in crypto, but alternative investments. And what I really was shooting for was 80/20, but
Mm.
I haven't stuck to that. So it's 90/10. Do you agree that there is a different strategy for us entrepreneurs out there who have their own business as compared to people maybe who have a 9 to 5 job and what they do with their money?
Yeah, I think that entrepreneurs have a much riskier profile, and the reality is I usually tell people to find some way to put a safety net under you, just in case, I mean, if your business is growing really fast and you 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 don't need the safety net as much in the beginning, like you when revenue is crazy, you need a safety net a little bit more, but you're already doing it because you're paying yourself first, you're putting, the money into all these buckets, and so that actually solves it. And then I do think that because you're willing to take the chances in your personal life with your job, you're probably just a little bit more risk comfortable.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, you can do all sorts of things. I like when you talked about real estate, I was like, but because I thought you were talking about rental real estate, like uh, home rentals.
Oh
And
no, I'm a
um,
self-storage guy. I don't even want to see where they're at. I just want to give my money to somebody who does. That's the way I look at it.
well, you know what? I mean, I renting your home to, a person to live there, I thought was a fine investment. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but it's kind of
I
a fine investment.
I did it in the beginning too. Way too much of a hassle for me.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, I've told people before, I've had investments that go south, but this was the first time an investment went south and swore at me at the same time. I just,
You learned your lesson real fast
yeah,
then, huh?
it's like, I don't need that kind of heartache. And, during the whole COVID thing, and all these people had people stop paying rent and they couldn't be evicted. It was like, Oh my God, if that was your big investment, you would be devastated, right? But regardless, I think self-storage is a great one. And weirdly, people always have more stuff than they have room for. Why is that? It's because they don't pay themselves first. It's because they go out and buy stuff and then they go, well, I don't have any money to invest because I'm paying it all to Mike. I've worked so
Yeah. Consumerism is not going down, is what we're saying here. And people, that's why I love self-storage. What's great
yeah,
about it is number one, it's too low on the priority list for politicians to get involved. So it's like if somebody stops paying their self-storage rental, and that it's not like you are going to have to hold on to it for months and months without, being able to do anything. You have total control. They stop paying 30 days later, everything in there is yours. And then the
mhm,
other aspect of it is is if it's $100 a month, what if you raise it $10? Does that
right,
stop somebody from leaving? $10
right.
is a 10% increase. That could change your life, but to them it doesn't, right? So I love that type of investing.
That's a great idea. Yeah, in terms of real estate investments, I think you found the absolute cherry in the
Thank you.
entire market. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. And so, when you're working with people and they ask you questions, it does require you to do sort of a psychoanalysis of their risk tolerance, right? Because us entrepreneurs, we're willing to jump out of an airplane and then build another airplane on the way down, right? So that is the different way of living compared to the average person who says, I need all my ducks in order before I even think about quitting my job. So is that all it comes down to, risk tolerance and age? And probably your strategy of how you want to build your dream life and who you want to build it with.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's risk tolerance, but again, I think you can do the math and change what you think is your risk tolerance, because essentially, I think that if you know that you are taken care of and all of your goals are taken care of, even if you're a super conservative person, um, you can take some risks with this money that's above and beyond what you actually need to survive. And so I think when people actually go through the math of what they need and what they want, it's much easier to start investing, taking some risk with your investments. And um, and again, I mean, I like stocks because they're completely hands off. I don't have to think about my stock market investments. They just are there. They continue to accumulate investment returns. You start when you're young, my age, you're wealthy, you don't have any worries. It's simple, but again, I think you've got kind of the same thing with your self-storage, and it's very much the same sort of investment, although you probably have to get people in and out, right?
Yeah, well, every couple years they do the refi, and so you get your money back after 3 years, and then you have equity. So when they go to sell it, you can still make money from the cash flow, but also from the sale of the asset. So it's amazing. I've never seen anything like it. That's why I love it, and I just love real estate in general because obviously the tax advantages, and it's real. I think we were talking before about how usually if it's new and it feels like it's temporary, it's usually a scam. I can go and visit the building, and I just love that. And if I wanted to, I don't want to. I like working from my apartment. By the way, I'm a big believer, not how you look at it, but I believe in renting where you live, especially if you're a single person or if you don't have a family, and owning what makes you money. So that's the way I look at it. But when it comes to stocks, though, you have something here I want to bring up: financial over dependence. I've never heard that phrase. That's amazing. All right, so you talk a lot about women investing. 80% you said of elderly individuals are women, and they will struggle because of you have some studies in here, but also roughly 90% of women are going to need to take care of themselves financially at some point in their lives. So, can you give us maybe there's a lot of women in my group called the Million Dollar Circle. What are you preaching here when it comes to what they should be focusing on?
Well, you should just always be involved. You should always know how your financial life works. You should always ask questions, make sure that things are explained well enough to you that you actually understand it. Um, and I saw it more with my mom's generation than I do with my own. And I see it less even, as generations go on. But yeah, when my dad passed away, my mom had not looked at their finances in, I would say, 20 years. And she really didn't have she wasn't comfortable with where she was because she didn't know where she was. And so I like actually sat down with her. I mean, fortunately, we did a lot of planning in advance, and they gave me access to their accounts so I could help them invest and all that stuff. And so I sat down with my mom and, okay, this is what you got, this is what you spend. You're good unless you live past 112. And at 112, we may have to talk about selling the house, but it's like, and so all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, now I'm comfortable. But, she didn't have a daughter that was actually kind of good at this and good at the math. She would be underspending because she wouldn't feel comfortable. And to me, I mean, you built up this money. You should not be leaving a life-altering amount of money to your children. You should be spending it. Maybe if you want to spend it with while you're alive on your children, go for it. That's awesome. Take them on vacations, help them with down payments for homes. I mean, do all these fun things that you get to appreciate. Don't have them buying a Jaguar when you die. Okay. It's just,
Yeah, I get that.
yeah. Again, it's all about reminding yourself that money is a tool and it's a tool to make you calm and comfortable. And so don't, I mean, make sure you know how to use this tool. Don't ignore it, but also it, don't keep on building up the cash without any concept of what it's going to do,
Mhm.
because people do both sides of this. They overspend and they underspend. A lot of the people who are really diligent about investing and saving when they're young have a terrible time letting loose of that when they get older. And so they die with millions and millions of dollars. That to me is kind of, it's wasted to your enjoyment. Why did you save all of this if you weren't going to use it on something? I don't care if you give it to charity. I don't care. I don't care what you do with it, but it's a tool. The tool is not to be left in the toolbox for your entire lifetime. It's to be used, so anyway.
Right. I saw Jackie Chan. He made this quote before. He goes, "I'm not leaving my kids any of my money." And the reason why is because if they're smart enough, they'll make their own. And if they're not smart enough, they'll just waste mine. And so
Good
I thought
point.
that was so clever. Now I think it's great to leave things to your kids. But that makes a lot of sense because what's the point of creating all this unless it's used for good? Like you only need so much, I've realized. And I'm around a lot of millionaires and a lot of them have said that, the moment you do X amount of dollars and it could be 500,000 to a million and you do that for a couple years, if you go from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20, 25 million dollars, your life doesn't change that much. And
Nope.
so there's a point where you can look at your life and say, that's enough. Let me start to really enjoy this. And as long as you're smart about your money and you have your money working for you with these investment strategies, you should be able to sleep well at night. And
Yeah.
an equation that you live by where it's almost like 10% here, 10% here, 10% here, setting it up on autopilot, maybe meeting with your accountant daily or not daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, anything that you recommend as sort of like a catch-all for our listeners?
Well, I think that the real thing is you need to do a financial plan at least once, and you need to do it really thoughtfully. And so that should incorporate every personal goal that you have, whether it's buying a house, having children, like that, all of the things that matter to you as a human being, that should be the basis of your financial plan. And now you're going to use money as a tool to get you all of those things. But after you set up that financial plan, in my opinion, you look at it once a year, you see, have my goals changed dramatically? Is there anything that's big that's going to change how I do my money? And if not, you pat it nicely on the head and you forget about it for another year, and you you leave your financial plan alone. Again, unless your life changes in a way that's going to change your goals. But the money part is all about the goals. And so if the goals don't change, just leave your money alone. And honestly, one day you'll wake up happy because you didn't have to spend time on all this stuff, and rich because you didn't spend time on all this stuff. You missed all the mistakes that everybody who's watching it closely make because you weren't concerned about it. You knew that your goals were taken care of. I think money is mostly, again, it once you do it once right, you never have to look at it again. I mean, even with a budget, once you do a budget, and that's just to show you it's not a what I should spend my money on, it's what am I spending my money on? Are those things actually that are priorities to me? If you're spending money on something that's not a priority, you stop it. It's like, why? Right? But
Right.
people get into habits. I always tell people that I learned this on budgeting when I was first married, and I was not much of a cook. And so we went out to dinner all the time. And then we just wrote at some point we decided, okay, spending is out of control. There's things that we can't, like afford that we want. And and so we just started writing down where are we spending our money. Um, and I realized we were and this was a long time ago, spending like $500 a month on cheap meals out, not like nice meals out. It was like the just inexpensive, like I don't want to cook tonight stuff. And I thought that was at the time the payment for a Mercedes. Did I want, like, what was I giving up? And so yeah, and that to me made it very easy to just realize that where you're spending your money is where you're setting your financial priorities.
Mm.
Are you are those your priorities? If they're not, then it's I think very easy to change them. And
Mhm.
so I think it's all just again for me it's all about the math. Just sit down once, do the math, and then leave it alone.
Man, it's show me where you spend your money and I will show you what's important to you. I guess that's a quote that I've heard before and it hits home, right?
Yeah.
What you spend your money on is what you pay attention to. So yeah, that's gold advice. Now you have a book that's coming out. I want to talk a little bit about it because I think when it does come out, our audience would love it because we do talk a lot about side hustles. And we did a book with a guy named Tony Wadley. His book is called The Side Hustle Millionaire, and it's all about turning your side hustle into the main hustle.
Mm.
And we talked a little bit about it before we hit the record button, but the way to wealth or financial freedom is multiple streams of revenue or an additional revenue stream. Stocks and maybe life insurance and real estate, great for wealth creation, great for net worth. But when it comes to day-to-day activity, that cash flow is really, really crucial. So I believe in creating many revenue streams. Can you tell us a little bit about this book you're working on and maybe some things that you found out recently?
Well, about 6 years ago, I it turned my side hustle into a main hustle. And it's a website called sidehustle.com. And that's sidehusl.com. And what we do is research, review, and rate more than 500 online platforms that help you make money in your free time. And these are kind of plug and play side hustles, the ones where you go to the online platform, you sign up, and the next day you're working. You don't have to pay anything to, participate. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to have an idea. You don't have to market. You just jump in and you decide, I'm going to walk dogs, or I'm going to rent out my house to the movies, or I'm going to, like I said, there's 500 of them. There are ones where you do people's laundry. There are ones where you cook for people to either take out or have it, meals in your home. And some of them are insanely lucrative. But the ones that are super lucrative are the ones that people don't know about because they actually spend the money paying you as opposed to marketing. I mean, you know about Uber and Lyft, and you don't make much money doing Uber and Lyft, but if you do something like Gigster or Respondent or user interviews, you're making a lot of money per hour, and that's what this book is going to be all about. We've reviewed all of these different online platforms. Um, I wanted a way for people who are not, into checking the web for everything, and who need a better way to kind of sort it and walk through what's the right side hustle for me. So we're putting together the 100 best side hustles that we've reviewed,
I
and
love it.
yeah, we're
Never
trying
heard
to.
of that. We've done hundreds of books. I've never heard of anybody putting a book like that together. That's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah,
So what
me
is it
too.
about the average person that you realize that that they just struggle with more than anything else? Is it just understanding money and how money is energy? And maybe there's this instinct, maybe pushed by the school system or the media, that individuals cannot be wealthy unless other people get poor, or because of your certain situation, you will always be a victim rather than being able to take control of your financial, destiny. So I believe, and because I've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, have you ever read that book at all?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
sure.
game changer. When I read that, I was 22 years old. I was never the same ever again. But I realized that there's two ways of looking at all of this. And the rich look at it one way, the poor look at it the other way. And the poor, that in that book, is what the school system's teaching. So, in my opinion, the school system is extremely responsible for some of the individuals getting out of school, not knowing what to do with money, not knowing that they need multiple streams of revenue, not knowing how to create wealth, how to save, how to invest. And that's where I put the blame. What have you noticed, and who do you put the blame on?
You're uh, getting at this victim mentality, and the thing is if you decide that you're a victim, then there's nothing you can do about it.
You're
Um,
helpless. Good point.
yeah, you're helpless. And if you're not a victim, you actually can do a lot. You can set your own destiny. And so I think the victim mentality is the absolute worst thing you can fall into, is feeling like, oh, it's somebody else's fault that I'm not rich, or that I'm not smart, or that I'm not, successful. Baloney. Get off your butt and do something. You know, uh, put it, everybody is capable of doing something to get the things that they want. But they have to lose this concept that it's somebody else's fault that you're not where you want to be. If you're not where you want to be, you need to figure out how to get there. And that's all there is to it. And it's not hard, actually. It requires hard work, as you know. But it's harder actually being a victim. It's harder to be sad and alone and, going, oh, if only the world was fair. It's like, forget it. The world isn't fair. People do judge you. There's all sorts of things that like you don't want to actually accept. It's like, oh, it's not safe for me. No, no, the world is not safe. It's not fair. It's judgy, it's cruel, it's whatever. But you know what? You can survive and thrive. And all you have to do is stop thinking about that and think about where you want to go and do it. Do it. Take those steps.
I'm right. If the world was fair, I'd be 6'2". That's the way I look at it. That's it.
I
But it's
know.
not. All right. So I'm with you on that. And you give away the power once you start to admit or even start to define yourself as a victim, right? And if there's nothing you can do with about it, you're helpless and people sense that and the opportunities do not come your way. So take control of your life and start to admit that you have what it takes. And it doesn't matter where you start or who you are or where you begin, whatever. It's requires you to think about it in terms of what could I offer another person that they value and they will pay for? And when you start
Right?
thinking in the capitalistic terms like that, you can win. And so when I think of investing, and maybe there's something else you can tie up in a nice little bow for us, but money in motion stays in motion, right? An object at rest stays at rest. An object in motion stays in motion, right? Momentum. So when you invest, you're having your money work for you because it's being used, it's being put to work. When you look at investing, is it that simple that if your money's sitting in your bank account, just sitting there and not working for you, it actually, due to inflation, is dying. And you need to
Yeah.
put it in motion somewhere to some level for you to reap the rewards of financial freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. You put your money to work and you put yourself to work. All of those things. I mean, who was it? Their big catchphrase was "work works," and it does. The harder you work, the luckier you get. So, yeah, just work hard at everything. Make sure that your assets are working for you as well as you're working for you, and you'll do great. Actually, you'll be rich before you know it.
Damn right. Outside of your own book, last question I have for you. Is there one that you recommend to our audience? Rich Dad Poor Dad is the one that changed my life. Is there a book that got you to fall in love with investing or money in general?
Oh my gosh. The problem is there's too many, you know. And yeah, I mean, The Intelligent Investor, which is even older than Investing 101, and it was Benjamin Graham's opus on investing, and it's really, really long, and it was redone by Jason Zweig not too long ago. Also just fundamentals of investing and how you analyze a stock and all that stuff. And so if you're into that, it's a marvelous book. But, I mean, I am an advocate of instead of like spending so much time on self-help and money, that you actually look at what the money is for and spend your time on that. So I have seen a lot of young parents who are so caught up in making it, and I just want you to do the math, figure out how much you need to get yourself on track. And then I want you, instead of reading an investment book, to read Yertle the Turtle with your kids and and just, make that your nightly ritual instead of like improving yourself, learning something more about investing. Improve yourself by spending that time with your kids and really enjoy your life as you have it.
Nice. Great piece of advice. The website is sidehustle.com. I believe that's sidehusl.com. Is that right?
It is, yes.
And outside of that website, a social media channel that you're quite active? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Instagram, X, anything like that?
I'm on all of those. Look for Side Hustle, Sidehusl. And we're on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and everywhere. And we've actually started doing little videos of different companies that we've reviewed so that places you can make money.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep a lookout for that book. I love the idea. So, guys, check out Kathy Christoph on Instagram, LinkedIn. Go to our website, but check out her book. 67 reviews on Amazon, 4.0 stars on Amazon. Investing 101, and yeah, get the basics down, and you'll be set free. So, Kathy Christoph, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. That was really fun.
Yeah,
Have a
absolutely.
great day.
Remember,
Bye.
guys, $1 million book will lead to $1 million life. Right on.